This morning, the title of my message is Press Pause. Now, it's a funny kind of message for this time of year, but the reason that I'm preaching it now is because I would really love that as a household of faith, as a family of faith, that by the time we get to the end of the year, that we have done this year better than we did last year. That we have implemented things along the way that have helped us, that will help us to finish this year, 2018, strong. Oh, everything's okay down there. All right. So we live in a culture that is speed addicted. I'm not talking about the drug. I'm talking about the pace. Society is dominated by beliefs and attitudes and ways of thinking that makes impulse, instant gratification, and loss of control our first line reactions. I want it now. Do it now. That seems to be the valued mantra of today's way of living. Whether you're young or whether you're old, we've got on this kind of speed train. We've also become more adept at thinking that anything and all things are possible. The intensity and the pressure on people to, retire young, work really, really hard and retire young, or be a GM by the age of 30, or the grandiose idea that we can be all things to all men. Well, it just doesn't happen that way. And then what happens is people actually get really disappointed because they realize at age 30 that they don't know everything. They realize that things are different and you have to work hard and things come slowly. And there's some things that you can only learn through age and experience. Before we knew that Charles's situation was as critical as it was, we were talking about the fact that he was declining. And I was talking to Gigi, and I said, it's really bizarre because when you start thinking about your mortality, which is something we don't like to think about today, in Ireland, you can't not think about mortality because when you go into church every Sunday, the graveyard is right beside you. The living and the dead walk side by side. The churches and the graveyards are in the center of town. It's like the living dead, And so you're aware. And so I said to Gigi, wow, there comes a stage where you can't say, next year I'd like to, because you're living on borrowed time. Now, none of us know the time. I get that. But when you're 19, you can kind of say, in 10 years, I'd like to be working or whatever. But there comes a time where you can't say that. There comes a time in your life where you have to go, I will never be a ballerina. I just won't. I will never be an athlete. I'm not designed to be either. But we have to take get this in our heads and realize that the way we've been made, the way we've been designed is just perfect. And sometimes we have to press pause to see who we really are. Because living at the speed and with these crazy ideas is making us sick. You just need to go to a doctor's office or a psychologist's office, and every day they're faced with the myriad of pressures that people struggle with. And we have designed that success looks like this. I'll tell you what, there is nothing like a deathbed to remind you that success looks like a life well lived. Success looks like a family that loves you. Success looks like an eternity that you are not frightened to go to. I remember when you used to have an argument with a friend at school, and you'd go home and you maybe, tell your mom and dad, and then you were free. You had space. You could be in this loving environment. If a friend called up, they had to get through Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so. And even if your parents let you speak to the friend after hours, if they let you, It was, be quick. You got to get your homework done, or this is family time. And that was said. And I would be in fear and trembling if I was to ring up somebody, Mr. Smith, it's Christie here. Can I speak to Susan? Very, very quickly. Thank you. Please. I just need to ask her something about homework tomorrow. That always won. But you had this space to come away and be loved and be nurtured and to be refilled with resilience again before you went back into that situation. But now the kids and us are faced with continual ping-pong text messages and social media, and I've had an argument with this and I've done this, and there is no space. So living at this pace and in this way is killing us because we're not designed to do it that way. Jesus says in Matthew 11:28-30, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus instructs us to press pause, to come to him and gather strength. I find it fascinating that I am preaching this message, and literally my whole life is on pause at the moment for the important things that are going on. My house is a mess, but that doesn't matter at this moment. I've pressed pause. Yesterday, while Rob was at the hospital, I just basked in worship music and came on to him so that he would give me strength. Let's just pray for one moment. Father, I thank you that at this moment we can press pause. At this moment, we can put aside what we plan to do after church. We can put aside what we plan to do this afternoon, this evening, tomorrow, next week. Lord, we can be in this moment. We can hold this moment sacred unto you. Father, I ask that you would help us now to come unto you and to take your yoke upon us. In your precious name, I pray. You know, it doesn't say, come unto me and get into your happy place. It says, come unto me and take my yoke. You know, we're always wanting to get away. But as Christians, we are actually have been bought with a price. Our life no longer is ours. We don't have the freedom to say, you know, I'll just do what I like, what makes me feel good, what makes my heart sing. No, Jesus says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I've got a picture of two oxen yoked up together. I love, have we got the picture there? We do. There's those beautiful cows. I love cows. I can talk to them. I can. And so can my father. I learned it from him. And they come to me when I talk to them, which is even more scary. And on the outside here is the oxen taking the most of the burden. And if you look at the illustration, I've got an illustration of the teacher and the student. And the teacher is on the outside, covering the most amount of ground, taking the most amount of weight. And the student is on the inside. You know, there's a funny thing about plowing a furrow. You can't plow a straight furrow if you're looking backwards. And when you press pause, you are staying in that moment. You're not rewinding. You're not fast forwarding. You're staying in that moment to clarify that moment. What are some of the reasons that you press pause at home when you're watching a TV program? Anybody like to help me with this? Toilet break. Absolutely. That's a good one. Anybody else? Cup of tea. Definitely. And food. Somebody said food. Anybody else got any other reasons? Yep. You get interrupted. Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other reasons? That's a really good one. So you want to clarify, you want to reflect, or you want to rewind and just think, did I get that right? Or I've missed something here because this is not making sense. See, that's a very good reason to press pause, because sometimes we keep going on even though we haven't clarified what actually happened before. What's the backstory? There's always a backstory. And sometimes you've just got to go press pause until you get some clarity. Any other reasons that you can think of? There's one very simple reason. You're just tired and you want to go to bed and you're going to watch the rest of it tomorrow. And sometimes we just have to press pause because we're just feeling a bit tired. Do you ever feel tired? You ever feel a bit, like you're running on empty? You may have a stressful job. You may have the type of job that is not 9 to 5, that is not a shift where you come in and you go out and then afterwards nobody contacts you. You may be a doctor, you may be a nurse, you may be in backup services where you are on call, all those sort of things. And those things can cause you stress. It affects all of our life. Now, I'd like to put a disclaimer here because I'd like to talk about how it can affect us psychologically, physically, and behaviorally. Quote, I am not a doctor. These are some of the ways it can affect you. Psychologically, stress has a profound effect on our psychological well-being. Symptoms can include, but like I say, please consult your doctor, depression, withdrawal, apathy, mental fatigue, anxiety, negative thinking, difficulty making decisions, exaggerated worry, anger and hostility, impatience, forgetfulness, and confusion. Physically, our response can also be physical. Again, I am not a doctor. It can include symptoms like rapid pulse, palpitations. I get those when I see Rob. Increased blood pressure, hyperactivity, ulcers, irritable bowel, tightening of the muscles, headaches, weight changes, compromised immune system, unexplained fatigue, itching. I get itching. Insomnia and shortness of breath. Behaviorally, and once more for good measure, I am not a doctor. Please consult one if you have any of these. Behaviors can include irritation with friends and colleagues, bossiness, outbursts of temper, withdrawal and detachment, sudden tears, changes in eating or sleeping patterns or in your sexual drive, accident proneness, reckless driving, inappropriate laughter. When I get really tired, I laugh. I do. I giggle at silly things. Compulsive shopping. Been guilty of that before too. Increased use of tranquilizers, alcohol, or cigarettes. I don't know if you guys remember, but several years ago, we had a car in the Grand Prix. It wasn't in the Formula One, it was the race before that. And it was, they called it the God Squad car, and Sam Newman tipped us up the back end once, which got us some, press, and it had John 3:16, which if you're going at 260 kilometers an hour, it's really good to know where you're going afterwards if something happens, on the roof. And then it had churches change, check it out. Anyway, the owner of the car was a man called Hector Lester, not Hector Lecter. If it was Hector Lecter, Hector Lecter from Silence of the Lambs, I reckon if that film had been made in Australia, it would actually have been called Shut Up Yous. So, anyway, Hector the Irishman, he is, I'm interviewing him, and I said to him, Hector, tell me this, when you're going at such an incredible speed, I said, what goes through your head? Like, you must be freaking out at the speed, and what do you think at that speed? He said, I don't think about the speed. He said, if I thought about the speed, I'd kill myself, and then I'd be dead, which is true, even for an Irish person. And I said, so if you're not thinking about the speed, I said, what are you thinking about? He said, I have to make sure that this little marker and this little thing on the dashboard is at this place when I'm at this part on the course. If it's not, he said, I'll be dead. I said, right, so there's a lot of talk about dead. He said, I have to make sure that the markers and the barometers are at the same place, he said, the right time, or I'm gone. And it got me thinking about some of my barometers. And like I said to you earlier, one of my barometers when I need to press pause is my skin gets all tight and itchy. And I get very flushed in the face. I don't know if anyone else has any of those symptoms. And I do get a wee bit irritable. And things that normally wouldn't bother me become mountains. Mountains. Insurmountable. And maybe there's a little bit of bossiness, like shortness. And also, I get very focused. I'm not mad, I'm just focused. Or maybe I'm not mad or bad, I'm just sad. Anyway, it's time to press pause. And that's why we need to think about this at the beginning of the year. When are some of the times that we need to press pause? And like we talked about, the reasons for pressing pause, sometimes you've just got to say, did I hear that right? Did I get that right? Have I missed something? Have I misinterpreted the way they meant this or thought this, or not thought about how they could be feeling, or thought about how I've done something similar and the effect that that's had on other people? You see, Jesus, the Son of God, came to serve, and to give his life for others. Yet, one of his habits was to regularly pull aside from the crowds of people and from the busyness of his ministry to spend time alone. We're talking about Jesus. Jesus did this. Now, if Jesus did this, it would be, take note, we should really do this. He set aside time to be with his Father. Jesus often pressed pause to spend time to pray and reflect. In Luke chapter 5, verse 15 and 16, it says, "Yet the news about him spread all the more, so that crowds of people," do you ever feel that crowds of people want a bit of you? They want a bit of me. 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 It's like sometimes, is there anyone here that has a brain that can actually respond to this situation? It happens to me with suitcases. Where did you pack my? What? It's like, could somebody else answer this question? To me, sometimes 4 people feels like a crowd pressing in on me. They came to hear him and to be healed of their sickness. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Lonely places are hard to find. If you're a mother, even the bathroom is not lonely. And if it's not your children, it's your husband who follows you in there. Come unto me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest, says Jesus. He's the good shepherd. Sometimes he wants to lead us beside quiet waters, but we'll also talk about some of the other ways to rest in a moment. First of all, I want to talk a little bit more about reflection, because reflection is important for our growth and development. Reflection gives the brain an opportunity to pause amidst chaos, untangle and sort through observations and experiences, consider multiple possible interpretations, and create meaning. This meaning becomes learning, which can then inform future mindsets and actions. For us, meaning making, we want to make meaning out of life. I have to give you a story. We have every year, we have the young adults come around and we do this Christmas tree putting up situation. And it's wonderful. We sing carols and we have mince pies and we have a race to get the tree up. And without mentioning any names, but one of our young adults, who's our senior Christmas elf, who is a lawyer, so I won't mention her name publicly because it may cause problems, heard that the top speed, because every year we have a speed, for putting up the tree complete with decorations, and Rob does the anointing of the angel on the top of the tree, was 1 hour and 27 minutes. So she was determined to beat this. And beat it she did. 1 hour and 23 minutes. But, you see, my problem is that often in life I've gone at things like a bull at a gate. But the problem is when you go at things like a bull at a gate, often you don't actually think it through. And this particular elf had not thought through the getting down of the lights, only the putting up of the lights. So when it came to the getting down of the lights, we had to put the branches of the tree down, so the tree was like this, and we had to kind of shimmy the tree so that the lights all shook to the bottom and fell in a heap. Now, Rob, when he did the lights, when he was the chief light putter-upper, he would methodically take the lights around and around, and there would be like a card then that you would take those same lights around and around down when you were putting the tree down. But this did not happen. So these lights are on a pile on the floor. Rob's response, throw them all out, we'll buy new ones. And I'm like, but the candle ones were the first lights we ever got as a married couple. Do you remember the first Christmas we had a branch? We couldn't afford a tree. And the second Christmas we bought the candles. And the third Christmas we put the candles on the tree. Oh, yes, whatever. It doesn't matter. Does it really matter? It's a set of lights. Just go out and get another set of lights. Grandad said, just make a cup of tea and give me a wee mince pie, and we'll sit here together and we'll try and sort these lights out. Don't worry. Nana says, I'm going to bed. It's too much for me too. But you really should keep the candles, she says. They've been there every year we've been out. We don't want to lose the candles. No pressure. So we're sitting here with about 10 sets of lights. We have a very big Christmas tree. So I've got a young adult sitting there. I've got Gigi sitting there, me here, and Grandad here. So Grandad's sitting just like this, drinking his cup of tea, shaking, drinking his cup of tea. And I'm like, like this. And Grandad's saying, can I have another cup of tea? And I'm like, we've got to get these lights fixed. Nan will be awake any minute. So I went and got Grandad a cup of tea. And after he'd drunk his cup of tea, he stands up triumphantly and goes, ta-da! And he's got 2 sets, completely free and straight. Because what did he do? He shook them out and loosened them up. You need to shake yourself out and loosen yourself up. Shake yourself out and loosen yourself up. Press pause. Shake it out and loosen it up. Shake it out and loosen it up. Pulling tighter on a problem is not going to fix it. It's probably going to break it. And so I learned something. So now we're all sitting, shaking and loosening, shaking and loosening. And within half an hour, we had all 10 sets of lights miraculously resolved. See, if you've got a problem and you're going head on like this with it, and you are determined to fix it, you got to shake it out, loosen it, have a cup of tea, mince pie, press pause, shake it, loosen it, don't tighten it. Some of the things that I find particularly helpful to me in the whole experience of loosening things out is what I call the prayer, well, not what I call, it's been called for centuries, the prayer of examine. You know, when you go to a doctor, they tend to not, give you a nice massage. They tend to do an examination, and where they prod and you go, ow, is probably, and how much you go, ow, probably determines what they do. And so we need to allow ourselves to be vulnerable and examined by God so that the owies, God can take away the owies in our life. My children used to come to me and say, take away the owie, Mummy, take away the owie. And sometimes even a Band-Aid took away the owie. Even now, Trinity, still praying for her, will often take away the owie. But we need to locate what it is that's going on. And the prayer of examine during my time of reflection really helps. And so basically, in a nutshell, it's like playing a video of the day backwards. Now, if it's been a good day, it can be like a rom-com or like just a nice Happy Lassie movie. But if it's been a bad day, it can be like a nightmare. But if it's a bad day, generally what I do is stop midway through the day, press pause and say, okay, so far has not been so good. What do I need to do? What fruit of the Spirit, what grace do I need to take into the rest of the day? And so the prayer of examine goes like this. And I will explain to you recently, how a little bit later, how recently this worked for me. Because this prayer of examine is about showing us where we're free and where we're not free. When we are spiritually free, when our spiritual and emotional state of being is healthy, when we are desirous of being faithful, hopeful, and a loving person, that's when we're free. Sandra talked a couple of weeks ago about what are our desires. Because our desires, often the ones that God has put there, are the ones that will help us to be spiritually free. We are spiritually unfree when our negative emotions and temptations have gotten the better of us. When we are too angry, sad, tempted, or scared to think straight. So what do? I ask God to make his presence known, to me in this moment. I tend to place my hands upwards, like this when I'm sitting quietly, in a stance of receptivity, to say, God, here I am. I need you to look over what I'm doing. I need you to be involved in this. I love to think about the Trinity watching my daily life. What would the Father be saying in his fatherly wisdom right now to this situation? What would the Son be saying to redeem this situation? And what would the Holy Spirit be doing as my edge giver, as my coach, as my parakletos, to help me shift this situation from an unredeemed, unfree one into a redeemed and free situation? I tell you what, you speak differently to people and you feel differently about situations when you think, I have the Trinity watching over me. Is this breaking God's heart? Or is this making him glad that I'm trying to find him in this space? Next, I spend a few moments in gratitude, thanking God for one or two of the blessings, big and small, that I've received today. You know, sometimes it's really easy to think of the blessings, and other times it's hard. But listen, we can always be grateful for the breath that's in our lungs, because when we're struggling for breath, you realize how much that is a blessing. Then I look back and I ask God, what was my most unfree moment today? That is, at what moment was I being carried away by my own fears, resentments, cravings, addictions, anxieties, or despairing thoughts? In my imagination, I return to that specific moment of the day. I imagine God and myself watching this moment together, side by side. God and I watch as my heart fills to the brim with the negative emotion that swept me away, because God is big enough to handle your negative emotion. I speak to God about what I see and ask God for forgiveness, or maybe for healing. I allow God to show me his perspective on the situation. Is there anything I sense God is trying to tell me about this? I talk with him about this and acknowledge my deepest emotions about it. Looking back again, I ask, what was my most spiritually free moment today? In which moment did I feel and act free from negativity, low and earthly thoughts and emotions? At what point did I feel most alive and most in sync with God? I imagine God and myself watching this grace-filled moment. We replay the moment in prayer. We observe not only what happened, but also what was going on deep in my heart. I speak to God about this and allow God to show me his perspective. We talk about it for a while and we celebrate that moment. Now God and I look to tomorrow. How can I live tomorrow out of that freedom that I felt in today's grace-filled moment? What attitudes and behaviors will I adopt in order to avoid the pit of that unfree moment? What is God calling me to do? To live in spiritual freedom. I make whatever commitments I feel I need to make to God, and I ask God to help me to keep those commitments. Reflecting on our lives helps us to meaning make. It helps us to make sense of our story and the key things that are part of our life story. Sometimes I journal, and sometimes I keep the stuff in the journal, and sometimes I tear it out and rip it up. But then I realized the other day, that's actually not giving a very true picture of what I'm going through, Because if people end up reading my journal when I'm gone, they're going to think all I was holy. And let me tell you, I am far from holy. Far from holy. And then there wouldn't be the book of Psalms. Or the book of Job. Where are you, God? Listen, we all have those moments. Where are you, God? But I love to spend that time reflecting. And then when God shows me the grace that I need, I start to allow that to become bigger in my world. I allow it to select how I'm going to live tomorrow. So we've talked about reflection, and now we're going to talk about selection. You see, reflection gives you clarity. Like at the moment, you all look beautiful. And if I put this on, you still look beautiful, but you're wrinkled. So I'm just going to take this off because I actually choose right now, I select right now to live in the moment of you all being beautifully blurred. But I can still see your smile, so keep smiling at me, please. When we take time to reflect, we press pause, and we then can select. We can take the heavy yoke upon us. Things that were heavy seem light. Like nothing in this room has changed, but I have looked through a different lens, and now I can see things differently. I can see with more clarity. And that's what happens when we look through God's lens. The situation around us might not have changed, but everything changes because how we see it changes. And that's important. Sometimes that is enough. You know, sometimes we need to learn to say no to the way we've been seeing things in the past and choose and select to see them the way God sees them with us in those grace-filled moments. We need to take control of our situations, press pause, and see how Jesus sees. Jesus often took control of situations. I love when he basically said, okay, folks, that's all now. Time to head home. Off you go. And it's there in the scripture. Matthew chapter 6, 45 and 46 says, immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and head across the lake to Bethsaida. I don't think he was like, oh, do you kind of want to go home, guys? It was like, it's enough now. Let's go. While he sent the people home, after telling everyone goodbye, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. He had no problem going, it's enough. You know, I was brought up with don't leave for tomorrow what you can do today. But now I've decided, you know what, sufficient unto that day. Like sometimes it's just enough. Because when you slip from being in grace and doing what you're doing into doing it in the wrong heart and the wrong attitude, I've learned things go very wrong very quickly. Very quickly. We need to know when we need to go, that's enough. I actually need to go now. I need to actually say no more now. And I need to press pause. That's important. When I had my first two kids, I didn't take time off. In fact, I actually had an accident the week before Gigi was born, and we ended up having a board meeting inside the maternity ward of the hospital. I mean, God have mercy. What was I thinking? Clearly, I had no idea where the location of the press pause button was. They brought in checks for me to sign while I'm busy, you know, on a drip and all sorts of things. I mean, crazy stuff. But you learn, you reflect, and you learn. And when I had Trinity, I decided that I would take some time off, and a way was made for me to do that. And I got offered an amazing opportunity to minister. And I thought, wow, because, you know, it never comes in the, you know, you have an opportunity to backslide, just take it. It was an opportunity to do something good that would help a lot of people. But I realized that that was actually not the best good at that time. The best good was being with Trinity. And then later on down the track, I was better equipped, and it was a better time, and I was able to do what I needed to do. We can select to take time, because the hamster wheel will not stop. It won't stop. And sometimes we just have to take a moment and just almost what I do is pretend I'm taking a photograph. I don't actually physically. I just suck in this moment. Suck it in. Commit it to memory. Allow it to grow in my mind and in my heart. I remember one time when my father had a collapse, and he ended up in hospital, and there he was, you know, with just a sheet over him. And he said, Christie, you know, there's no photographs. There's no title. There's no nothing. You have what you have in your memories. And so it's important that we don't rely too much on the photographs, but we rely on the feelings and the positive moments that we have with one another. You have to press pause to put in the important blocks in our life. Life is all about relationship, people, not tasks or things. Yes, of course, we've got tasks to accomplish, but there's times for all of those things. In his book, Unloading the Overload, which actually nearly overloaded me reading it, Cliff Powell writes, somehow we have made the mistake of thinking that activity is sanctified by God, but rest is not. It is not work versus rest. God blessed both work and rest. Good quality rest can restore your good mood as well as your capacity to function. You see, sometimes we use if you're naturally good at resting and being contemplative, you use the scripture that Mary chose the greater thing and sat by Jesus' feet. But there still needs to be things done. You got to look at that in context. In context, that was 2 weeks before Jesus died. Of course, Mary is going to sit at his feet and listen to what his wishes are. Of course, I'm going to put aside what I'm doing at the moment that has to be done in order to prepare for whatever is needed by the members of our congregation that are going through bereavement. But it's not one or the other. Now, sometimes rest does not look like plunking in front of a TV or sleeping. In fact, there's a lot of research that shows that being involved in a sport, I mean, especially like if I do anything that involves balancing, my brain totally rests because all I'm doing is trying to get this thing right. I can be involved in a sport, playing a musical instrument, doing something active can also be incredibly restful for your brain. Recently, I've got a photograph of a drawer that I took. It'll come. I have great faith. Here's a drawer. This is the drawer I took, right? And I was instructed that that drawer was meant to look beachy. So I took that drawer, and the next photograph, please, I took Rob's favorite T-shirt, which I will say he had already committed to the dust. But he was sad when I started cutting it up. But it was already holy, and it was really holy. And I took it and I cut it up. Next photograph, I stripped this back using shellite. You see, I can actually use the terms now. It's very exciting. And then I stripped it back. Next photograph, please. Oh, yes. Well, that was that wasn't. I didn't strip Rob back. That was the T-shirt that got stripped after we took the shirt. After we took the arms out of it. He loved that. Next photograph, please. This is the driftwood effect that I had. And next photograph, please. Rob just didn't do anything on this project. He just got on the photographs, but that's Rob. Next photograph. These are how the drawers finished, like a French provincial kind of look, beachy look. Keep going. Then I got really into it. I was like, I've got this sander in my hand. I never had a sander in my hand before. And then I took it on, and I'm telling you, I had pain where I didn't know I had muscles. Anyone who's ever sanded has now told me it's a thankless job. Listen, I was perspiring. I had sawdust in my nostrils, in my ears, everywhere you can think of. But I'm thinking, okay, I can either do this and it can be a labor, or I'm doing this as rest and reflection. And so I began to pray and I began to get totally into it. And then after I did this one, I was like, what else can I sand? It's like I was going around going sanding. So I took the sanding and I sanded this all down. This is the bedside locker. Next one, please. This is the bed. I took onto the bed, sanded it down. Next one. And then this is what we created. I created. So God and I created this. I did the kind of the driftwood in the downward slats, but left it open in the top slats. I think it looks really good, don't you? Okay, and then the next one. That's the bedside locker and the bed head you see together, and then the drawers are like the gray, so it kind of all matches together. And I think the last one is the bottom of the bed for some reason. I don't know. Is the last one the bottom of the bed? Yeah, we don't need to see that. That's the bottom of the bed. But it was an amazing experience, and I was exhausted physically. I mean, honestly, I did muscles in my armpits. Like it was, but I felt spiritually alive. I felt emotionally alive. I had upcycled this bed suite. I was like, bring it on. So exciting. It was awesome. So I had a good time resting. It's important to realize how we rest and to recognize the ways that we rest. Because rest is a form of resistance in a world that is constantly pushing us forward. We have to go push back and press pause. In our contemporary context of the rat race of anxiety, the celebration of Sabbath is an act of both resistance and alternative. It is resistance because it is a visible insistence that our lives are not defined by the production and consumption of commodity goods. It's an alternative because we go, hey, listen, we're going to do this a little bit differently. We can select to live in the moment, to press pause. The more we follow the ways of Jesus and take on his yoke, and let me tell you, I resisted the temptation to bring out yoke jokes. Honestly, it cracked me up when I was looking at them, and I got all scrambled, and then I was ecstatic because I knew I could actually, not use egg jokes and take his yoke upon us and appreciate the moment. We learn a lot from, Jesus says, consider the birds of the air. Why? Because they've naturally mastered the skill of living in the moment. Murphy and Lexi do the same. I mean, have you ever noticed how dogs they just lick you when they want to? They just, don't do that today, please. But they just jump around and they waggle their tail and they just come pouncing in when they want to and they snuggle up beside you and they just know how to do life. We can learn a lot from our dogs. Really, we can. But Jesus says, look at the birds of the air. And Groucho Marx, who I love Groucho Marx, in Essential Groucho says, I, not events, have the power to make me happy or unhappy today. I can choose which it shall be. Yesterday is dead. Tomorrow hasn't arrived yet. I have just one day, today, and I am going to be happy in it. Now, let me explain to you. I was so tested in this. So I am in the elation of the sanding world. Could have something to do with the chemicals that I used to strip back the wood, but I was very happy. I'm on the way back from the peninsula and I get a phone call from Rob. The tree in our back garden Rob has preached on this tree. It has been a blessing. 2 months of the year, it has not been so good because the berries have fallen off it. But the tree essentially has been a gift. The tree has allowed us to go out into our garden, dressed in our PJs with our cup of coffee in the morning and give thanks to God for the privacy that we have, for the moments of sanctity that we have in the crazy world that we live in. The tree has just been amazing. 6 meters tall, 5 meters wide, has blocked out the world from us. And Rob rings me to say, the tree has been knocked down. Now, there was no permit previously to knock the tree down. So the house that is built behind us now is looking right into our private space with open windows. They will have to do something, I understand. So I'm going, okay, I alone can choose and select how to live in this moment. So Rob is saying, we're selling the house. I'm praying for him. At the moment, I'm in this good space. But you guys all gave me an iWatch for my 50th birthday. So I'm praying that my spirits will be lifted, and the only thing that was lifted was my heart rate was going up and up and up. I then started to pray in the spirit. That was not helping, believe it or not. And then I thought, okay, what other places can I go to enter into rest? So I put on some worship music, and that helped for a little while. And then I got myself into a good space, and Rob was the one that was grief-stricken. And anyway, the next-door neighbors came round, and, even though we'd tried to communicate with them, they hadn't done the right thing and communicated with us. And the wife comes round, and I knew she was a psychologist, and I said, look, we're just experiencing some grief at this because this has taken away our entire private space. And I said, you're a psychologist, you'd understand grief and loss. And she said, yes, I'm on maternity leave. I said, you'd still understand grief and loss. That got me. Anyway, so if I show you, just want to show you the photograph, the tree. So this is my daughter, not the tree. She hasn't fallen out of the tree, although that does happen sometimes. But this is the tree. Nothing. You can see nothing behind us but the tree. And then this is what I came home to. The next photograph, please. So I was selecting or trying to select to live in purpose and in joy. But I hadn't fully pressed the pause button the other day. And I went into this state of amnesia. I forgot who I was and why I was on this planet. I had watched a movie when I was on holiday called Deck the Halls, where Danny DeVito decides he's going to make these big flashing lights outside on the roof of his house all over. The neighbors cannot sleep. The woman, who's very gracious, puts on a black iPad. The man decides he's going to make things bigger and better on his side of the fence. So I went with the man. So I'm thinking, oh, who can I speak to? Somebody knows something. I can put up big bright lights. Oh, I can put up Jesus loves you in big bright lights. Oh, no. Then I remembered the Furby. The Furby. You know those little things, a Furby? And in the middle of the night it goes, yeah, feed me, feed me. Oh, I could do that. And then I thought, who knows about technology? Because what we could do is we could set it so that every night it comes off at a different time. So that even if they call the police will come and they'll think that they're mad, not me. Then I went into different colors that we could put up in flags right across the back. Then I went really low. I thought, Robin, I can just walk out there in the noddy and go, welcome to our neighborhood. I did this. I really did this. I forgot who I was. I had amnesia. It got worse very quickly. I have to tell you the worst part, because Rob was off doing holy things and I actually confessed to it last night. Because then what I did was I went inside and I prayed and I tried to get into this space. And the Lord said, you know what? It's okay. I have got this. I've got this. And he said, it's okay to vent your feelings about this. It's okay. And I thought, okay, all right. So I got the phone, the portable phone, because there's now a guy on the roof looking into the pool. I am in my nightie because I thought, blow this. So I went out and I said, yeah. Oh, look, we tried to talk to the owner. Yeah, no. And he actually canceled an appointment. We came home. Yeah, really bad. Oh, look, no, I don't want to go the legal route. No, I want to. Oh, yeah, look, we can just put up plastic. Yeah, we need to do that. Orange, yeah, let's do orange. Orange plastic, we'll put up a temporary thing. I'll send somebody around to tell the builder that we're doing something. And I came inside and I went, you still got it? And he said, and God said to me quite clearly, yeah, the guy's got earmuffs on. So I looked and I went, he said, but the next time the shower or the beach might be a good option. So I went back to my time of reflection. What was my most unfree moment? Well, let me tell you, I think somewhere around the orange plastic and Rob and I standing out there was probably the most unfree moment. And at what moment was I being carried away by my own fears, resentments, cravings, addictions, anxieties, or despairing thoughts? And then I asked God, what is this in me? And I realized, I am tired of being nice. You know, I'm just tired of, because I'm human like everybody else. And I realized, one time we had a builder come in and he gave us a quote in writing to build a fence, $900. And then he charged us $2,000. And we had to pay it. Why? Because we're pastors and we're nice. And I just said, sometimes I just want to tell people to go and get lost. And then I press pause, get rid of the amnesia, and remember who I am and why I'm here. But God understands this humanity, this humanness. And he can handle it. He can take it. And then as we give it to him, and as we allow him to do a deep work, not a suppressed, oh, I better be nice. It comes out of a desire to bring glory to God, not just a I better be nice thing. And it's okay in the right place. God's got big shoulders. He's got it. He told me he was laboring for me. And so now the thought of God as a laborer involved in this makes me excited to see what the solution is going to be. I have moved from, I am going to fix this, so help me, God, to go ahead, Lord, make my day. Show me how this is going to come, how we're going to get a solution that is going to be a blessing and bring glory to your name. So in conclusion, we need to press pause so that we don't forget who we are and why we're here. We reflect. I find the prayer of examine a helpful way to reflect, to do that. And then out of that, you can come to a selection with you and God. It's much better when God helps you with the solution, because then you know that you're in it together. You're not just doing it alone. And then after that, you realize that you're living the life that He has elected for us. Reflection, selection, election. Press pause. Press pause. When you feel that check, when you feel that owie, press pause. I wonder what God's going to ask you to press pause in today, this afternoon, this evening, tomorrow, next week. Make it a habit, and you'll see God's glory revealed in your life.